Welcome to America Now. I'm Don Brown. On this show, America Now, we're pro-American. We're proud of our military and we love our country. We do proudly stand for the anthem every time. And yes, we also humbly kneel before the cross. On this show, America Now, we are nationalist, not globalist, and we will never be globalist. We will never submit to the authority of a global government run by the UN or any other global power. We believe in America first, and America always. That is nationalism to us. And our reference is through a biblical worldview, and we believe in Ronald Reagan's great vision of America as a shining city on a hill. Today's topic, we begin to look at left-wing academia as one of the building blocks of the socialist left's attempted takeover on the horizon. See, our colleges and universities have become social laboratories, in fact, social breeding grounds for the dissemination of left-wing ideas. American universities are where radical thoughts are incubated, and young radical social justice warriors are recruited. Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and many others are largely the product of their exposure to left-wing indoctrination while in college. Now, today we begin to discuss the role of colleges as a breeding ground for socialist takeover, and as we do that, we start with a call to action and a call to prayer for a brave young student at the University of California at Berkeley who's being ridiculed, harassed, and threatened because she has taken a stand for her faith in the face of politically correct fascism. Her name is Isabella Chou, and she serves on the Student Senate at Cal Berkeley. In this case, the student government at Berkeley was asked by the school's, quote, Queer Alliance Resource Center. Imagine that, a major university having something called a, quote, Queer Alliance Resource Center, to pass a bill opposing the Trump administration's proposed changes to Title IX to basically define gender as it really is a person's sex at birth. In other words, the Alliance Resources Center, whatever that is, was pressuring the Student Senate to pass a bill condemning the Trump administration, declaring that gender is determined at birth. Imagine that. Now, Isabella could not live with that because of her faith. She abstained from the vote and explained publicly that she could not support the bill because she believes that God created man and woman and that marriage should only be between a man and a woman. That's quite a bold statement. True, but it's especially bold at Cal Berkeley, which is one of the most liberal universities in the world. Now, radical students at Berkeley are circulating a petition demanding that Isabella resign. They have publicly called her a horrible person, and they've called her a mental imbecile, all because she is a Christian voicing her biblical convictions. Here's what Isabella recently said in an interview that run in the Christian Post. She said, "There is a Christian community on campus that has been praying for me and encouraging me throughout all this. And if I don't represent their views, who will?" She asked a good question. It's like the quote from President Reagan a few weeks ago. If not us, then who? And if not now, then when? Isabella, a young lady in her early 20s, gets it better than most of us. As our friend Franklin Graham has said in commenting on Isabella's case, there seems to be zero tolerance for Christians and for the truth of Jesus Christ. Isabella is right when she said, "I can love you and still disagree with you." Now, what has happened to Isabella is a microcosmic example of what's going on in most major colleges and universities all over the country today. The courage that she is showing for her faith is the exception and not the rule. The discrimination that she is now facing because of her faith, unfortunately, is now the rule and not the exception. Now, here's a question for all of us here today. Are we willing to show the same kind of courage in defending our faith as Isabella Chou, a young student at Cal Berkeley, has shown? Are we willing to take the criticism and the name-calling and the ridicule and the abuse that this young lady has taken? Are we? We need to ask ourselves that question. We should all draw from Isabella's courage and take a moment to send her a note of encouragement. You can find her on Facebook, and I'm going to give you her Facebook contact number if you have Facebook. It is facebook.com/Isabella P. Chou. I'll give that to you again. Facebook.com/Isabella P. Chou. Please write her a note of encouragement. Pray for her. If you're in California, write your legislatures and let them know you don't appreciate this bullying. Write the school administrators and tell them that you want the First Amendment protected at Berkeley and to not have your students subject to politically correct fascism. If we are going to be we the people, we got to hold our Congress their feet to the fire.
All of those people in Congress work for us, not the other way around.
Well, we have to have the courage to speak truth and to understand we're going to get ridiculed. Our Constitution was put together and designed as a device that limits the power of government.
We're not going to lose this great republic that we were entrusted with, and that so many paid such a price to preserve. It will not be lost on our watch.
A few weeks ago, you may recall, just after the left-wing feminist Christina Blasi Ford came forward to make highly questionable claims about now Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, we conducted an investigation into a number of Ms. Blasi Ford's left-wing political activities. And we presented an expose right here on America Now about a number of those activities which she was involved in. We showed, frankly, that she had a mountain of motivation to try and block Justice Kavanaugh from becoming a justice on the Supreme Court. Fortunately, she did not succeed. But it was a type of expose questioning her motivations, frankly, that we're not going to see anywhere else in the mainstream press, or even from Fox News, who had some of its normally reliable commentators like Brit Hume, Martha MacCallum, and Chris Wallace come out and claim that, quote, they found Miss Ford, to be credible, end of quote. Even the normally reliable Brit Hume found her, quote, credible and powerful, end of quote. Come on, Brit. I love you, man, but you're a lot smarter than that. You can do better. You see, to fully fillet a feminist under these circumstances is too much of a politically correct stick of dynamite, even for Fox News. Pointing out the underlying motivations of a feminist to fabricate is, frankly, a hot piece of explosives that even Fox News is afraid to touch. Now, for the record, we here at America Now are not afraid to fillet a feminist if the facts call for it, as they did in this case. And for the record, we did not in the case of Ms. Blasi Ford. The moment she began testifying, we did not believe that Mrs. Blasi Ford was credible in any way, shape, or form, and we said so immediately. And I think that we have been proven right about that in view of the fact that now a number of women have come forward saying they actually fabricated claims against Justice Kavanaugh. There's one of the reasons that you're going to get things here on America Now that you simply won't get anywhere else. And in Ms. Blasi Ford's case, you may remember that we pointed out that she had given money to the National Democrat Party, to Act Blue, a radical social left-wing organization. She gave money to the socialist Bernie Sanders. She signed a letter of protest against President Trump's immigration policy. These are all points, by the way, that Martha MacCallum and Brit Hume and Chris Wallace all should have been reminding us about before they made these blanket assessments that they found her credible. They did not make these points for whatever reason. We also pointed out that Ms. Blasi Ford participated in the radical feminist women's march, the vulgar Trump-hating movement that was founded by Linda Sarsour, in which Madonna said that she had thoughts about blowing up the White House. Well, guess what? Now there seem to be some cracks in the left-wing political armor shaking the solidarity, it would appear, of Ms. Sarsour's women's march movement. Two left-wing Hollywood performers, Deborah Messing and Alyssa Milano, have publicly withdrawn their support recently for the movement, which is known as the Women's March. Ms. Milano, who's one of the prominent founders of the Me Too movement, stunned both conservatives and liberals recently when she announced that she would not be attending the 3rd annual Women's March in Washington, D.C. in January of 2019. And now Ms. Milano has gotten support from another Hollywood actress, Will and Grace star Deborah Messing, who, by the way, is no fan of President Trump and has relentlessly criticized him. But Miss Messing becomes the second Hollywood lefty to condemn the Women's March and to drop out from attendance. Now, good for her. But why are these ladies taking this surprising stand? It is because Linda Sarsour, the founder of the Women's March, is a radical Muslim who stands with Louis Farrakhan, one of the most outspoken anti-Semitic racists in the world. And in the wake of the inexcusable massacre of Jews in Pittsburgh, I suppose for these women that standing with the woman who stands with Farrakhan became too much for both Miss Messing and Miss Milano to endure. Now, the event's organizers, the Women's March organizers, Linda Sarsour and also Tamika Mallory, are both supporters of Farrakhan, even though he's made some of the most horrible statements over the years. Here are a few of the things Farrakhan has said. He said, quote, "Jews don't like Farrakhan. They call me Hitler. Well, that's a good name. Hitler was a very great man," Farrakhan said in 1984, saying Hitler was a great man. Farrakhan also said, "Murder and lying comes easy for white people." What a racist statement. But Farrakhan said that in 1994. He also said, quote, "It's now becoming apparent that there are many Israelis and Zionist Jews in key roles in the 9/11 attacks." Israelis had foreknowledge of the attacks. He made that claim in 2015. And he said in 2002 that, quote, "The white man is our mortal enemy and we cannot accept him." What a racist. In Tehran recently, Farrakhan was quoted and spotted leading a, quote, "Death to America" chant at the University of Tehran in the fall of 2018.
آمریکای رهبر جنبش امت اسلام در آمریکا رو در روز استکبار ستیزی ملت ایران.
UC Barkley اسرائیل ملک بر اسرائیل ملک بر.
Farrakhan, who's been photographed with former Democrat Presidents Barack Obama and Bill Clinton, has referred to Jews as termites and Adolf Hitler as a very great man. For Milano, apparently association with such a person was a deal breaker when it came to attendance at the upcoming Women's March. She said that any time there's any bigotry or anti-Semitism, in that respect, it needs to be called out, and she's right. She said, "I'm disappointed in the leadership of the Women's March that they have not done it adequately." In other words, Linda Sarsour has not condemned Farrakhan or his statements or their associations. About Sarsour and Mallory, Milano added that it is unfortunate that none of them have come forward against him, meaning Farrakhan at this point, or even given a really good reason why to support him. Good for her. Miss Messing was a participant in the Women's March in 2017, so it seemed that she would likely return. This is the same Miss Messing who is hardly a conservative who, get this, attacked the Green Party voters during Ohio's 12th congressional district special election earlier this year and accused them of Russian meddling. The same Miss Messing who canceled her New York Times subscription last year because the publication did a profile on conservative pundit Ben Shapiro. In other words, the New York Times is even too conservative for Miss Messing. She also praised her 13-year-old son for refusing to stand for the national anthem prior to a New York Rangers hockey game that the family attended. And she claimed to cry tears of joy because of her son's decision. No, Miss Messing is no America-loving patriot. Not at all. But when it came to the Women's March, though, this is how bad this march is and its organizers are. She had had enough. Many other celebrities who've attended the march in the past, like Olivia Wilde, Olivia Munn, Rose McGowan, and others, have not spoken out against the event, and we don't know if they will or won't follow in the footsteps of Milano and Messing. But that brings us back to Ms. Sarsour, the leader of the Women's March. Who exactly is she? And why have at least two feminists now, to their credit, I might add, turned on her? Well, Ms. Sarsour, in a word, is a Muslim Palestinian activist who hates Israel, who hates Jews, and who would like to see Sharia law advanced in the United States. Yes, this is the woman who organized and led all those left-wing Trump-hating women in their rallies beginning the day after the presidential inauguration, the same Ms. Sarsour who organized all that. And this is the same lady that now Ms. Messing and Ms. Milano are seeing the light about. Courtney Love, another Hollywood star who is a longtime LGBT activist, who also is hardly a conservative, has also jumped on the anti-Sarsour bandwagon. Recently, Ms. Love called Sarsour a, quote, anti-Semitic terrorist in a series of tweets. Now, you can find wisdom anywhere sometimes. Now, in that tweet, Ms. Love is correct. Here's what she also says, quote, I won't follow anything that's being led by an anti-Semitic terrorist that's using feminism as a tool to promote her racism. Ms. Love said that in a Twitter exchange with Sarsour. Love was responding to Sarsour's online campaign to raise money for a Muslim woman who she, Sarsour, claimed was the victim of a quote-unquote hate crime, whatever that is. On her fundraiser page, Sarsour, who is, of course, Muslim as we said, wrote that Rama Warsami was brutally beaten by a white man as she came to the defense of another sister. The Council on American Islamic Relations, a left-wing Muslim group committed to advancing Sharia in the United States to replace the Constitution, has reportedly asked that the incident be investigated as a hate crime. Sarsour has raised more than $111,000. But Love tweeted that Sarsour was a criminal for collecting these funds on made-up hate crimes and urged her followers to research more about her ripping people off thousands for a story that's not true. Maybe, just maybe, Courtney Love has taken heed of my friend Tom Trento's advice to make America think again. We can only hope. But she wasn't finished, Ms. Love wasn't. She said this of Sarsour, the founder of the Women's March. She said, you, Ms. Sarsour, are a vile disgrace to women and all mankind. Wow. Sarsour responded recently to those tweets by saying, welcome to America, where a white woman celebrity uses her platform to deny that a black immigrant Muslim woman was brutally assaulted. There goes the race card again. Sarsour was recently asked to speak to the graduating class at the City College of New York. To the graduating class, that is. And of course, radicals are welcome on university campuses, as we started to say earlier. And the university did receive lots of criticism for having her speak. But at the graduating class at CUNY, she said that it is time for students to demand and commit to change. And she wasn't talking about Republican change to support the Constitution. And for that, and for her presence, even though she is an outspoken anti-Semite who supports Farrakhan, she got a standing ovation. Now, Sarsour was the director of the Arab American Association of New York in 2014, and she posted a Twitter picture of a Palestinian throwing a rock, presumably at Israelis. And she wrote in that photo that this was the definition of courage. She was endorsed by the movement to boycott Israel and has come out in support of a one-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. By the way, there's no such a country as Palestine and never has been. But that is a position that many say would bring an end to Israel's existence as a Jewish state. And those critics, in my opinion, are right, by the way. Sarsour is criticized and been criticized for saying in a March interview that one cannot be both a feminist and a Zionist. And this is the lady who refuses to condemn Farrakhan and gets a standing ovation at the City College of New York, the leader of the Women's March movement. This shows we were correct when we called out the Women's March movement as being an anti-Semitic, radical, Jew-hating movement. At least that is true of its leadership. And that is one of the building blocks of the left in attempting to bring down the republic. But it's encouraging to see at least some cracks in the armor, even if those cracks are coming from left-wing figures who don't always see eye to eye with the way that we might see. This goes back to the virtues of exposing truth. The truth will set you free. Now, we'll continue to follow this story and the left wing's attempt to use academia as a venue for undermining the Republic and the Constitution in weeks to come. We'll be right back after this break. You know, many of us have heard about the tragic killing of 4 Americans in the American Special Missions compound in Benghazi in 2012. And that indeed was a tragedy. Those Americans were not supported by American firepower, and they were left to lose their lives. I'm going to share with you a little bit about an even greater tragedy. And it's documented in my book, Call to Sign Extortion 17, The Shootdown of SEAL Team 6. The book, Extortion 17, talks about the shoot down of a U.S. helicopter in Afghanistan about 1 year before Benghazi, in which we lost 30 Americans, including 17 members of the vaunted SEAL Team 6, the same group that just 3 months earlier had killed Osama bin Laden. Now, Extortion 17 was a CH-47 Chinook helicopter. We were using those for special operations missions in Afghanistan at the time. And at 2:22 in the morning, we loaded 17 SEALs on that chopper for no good reason, flew them on a mission that should have been about 10 minutes. The chopper was flown into a Taliban hot zone and shot down. It was shot down even though we had an aircraft overhead that saw Taliban on the ground and tried to turn it down. Extortion 17 is the greatest cover-up probably in the history of the U.S. military. It is Benghazi on steroids. I hope that you'll get a copy of the book and read it and join in my effort to try to get a meaningful congressional investigation so that we know what really happened to these guys. Thank you so much. Welcome back. Our thought for the day comes from our second president, John Adams, who said that liberty cannot be preserved without a general knowledge among the people. And he's right. We must remain awake and aware, and we must be not asleep at the switch. Which brings us to today's good news, which comes from the first chapter of the book of Joshua. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. That's our show for this week. We hope you've enjoyed it, and we look forward to seeing you back next week. Until then, remember, America first, America always. God bless America.